Hey, Greg. I'm Lynn Tilton. I'm the CEO of Patriarch Partners, and we manage here 75 companies that I personally own. And together, that makes me the largest female-owned business in America. The only thing that my companies have in common is that they all started broken and left behind. And so I'm really in the business of rebuilding companies that have had history, some of them centennial, many of them iconic American brands, and bringing them back to life, which is very similar to a startup, except that you have a very expensive infrastructure, but you also often have, the people in the distribution system, but they have a lot of things in common, which is that ultimately you have to create the propensity of growth. I'm in 14 different industries, everything from consumer products to building helicopters to trucks, and have owned 150 companies over the last 13 years. So have a lot of experience in a lot of different areas.
I really appreciate your participation in this and your reaching out and helping BrainSentry as we try to revolutionize safety in sports. I'm Greg Merril. I'm the CEO of BrainSentry. This is my third health-related product startup company. So I've been involved in a lot of development of sensor technologies and the use for medical simulation and training, also for building consumer video game controllers to get kids physically active when they play video games. And 2 years ago, an engineer and I were looking at the issues with concussions and thought we could help out by developing a sensor which would help sort of take the ego out of the game and identify the kids that need to be assessed for concussions. And I really appreciate you helping out.
I think the idea is great. You're using existing technology, but taking it to another level for a sort of problem that faces our children and our athletes. But businesses are the confluence of cash and creativity. And once you have an idea, it's very important to have a business plan to bring to market. And one of the things that I was struggling with was a lot of your sort of business plan, who you're going to market to, how are you going to market, and I wanted to have a deeper understanding of whether you really looked at all the issues. So I have a number of questions for you if you want me to start in, or if there are other things that you would like to tell me first before I start asking you the difficult questions.
Well, maybe I could give you a little bit of background in terms of my discovery of the market and how I entered it. That might shape some of the questions. I was doing some consulting work 2 years ago with a defense contractor that was building an assessment tool for brain injury for the soldiers. And I was specifically looking at the application of that technology for the civilian market, and I thought of youth football. So I had this, and the technology was like a mobile device that would ask questions about measuring reaction time and memory for the soldiers. So I thought that'd be great on the sideline. When I looked at youth football, I realized that it doesn't matter how good that assessment tool is. No one's going to use it because the kids don't admit when they're injured, and the coaches, frankly, often either don't know or they don't want to know that the players are hurt. So they will not take the kids out of the game. And that's when I thought what we really need is to get the egos out of the game and develop a sensor which can make it objective in terms of which kids need to be assessed for concussion. So I was really looking at the youth market, and I developed a product and our strategy around trying to access that youth market.
Okay, well, first of all, who's manufacturing your product? And have you looked at the cost of manufacturing your product? I understand that you want to do a rental model, which is $50 a year, but there's very different working capital needs from when you sell a product versus when you rent a product. So have you done an assessment of the cost buildup of what your product costs as you're trying to market it against the competitors?
Yeah, so we really modeled the business based on the sale of the product, and we have margins which work whether the product is recycled or goes through a reverse logistics process or not. We decided to manufacture in the U.S., and we've teamed up with a contract manufacturer in Raleigh, North Carolina, that actually has a core competency in reverse logistics. But the economics of our business are based around the cost of goods, which gives us appropriate, attractive margins without the recycling or reuse of the product. So it's more of a, I hadn't thought of it in terms of a rental business, but I guess that you could think of it that way. It's really a subscription business where the customer gets a sensor 1 year. They can either throw the sensor away, or we'll encourage them to return it to us for refurbishment. And the next year, they really get a new sensor.
I just want you to understand that there are different working capital needs. Look, businesses, I always look at a business as you have to create propensity, which is growth. And that means you have to have the people times the plan times the processes times the pace, which is the sense of urgency. That's what a turnaround or a startup needs, which means you have to have all the right people in the right place. You have to have a plan, a strategic vision, which is not only the short-term vision, but the midterm and the long-term dream. So what's the next product? What's the next market? How do you keep going? You have to have the processes in place to drive the people to that plan. So that means that you have to have pricing models, financial models, understand what the costs are going to be. I know you have more experience than most people doing startups, especially in this group. But in the end, the number one reason that startups fail is they run out of money before they're able to bring their ideas into complete businesses. And so when I look at your business, because I've had businesses that are subscription based too, and what people don't take into account is when you build a product and you sell a product, there's usually a number of months between the time you use the working capital to build inventory, sell it, get a receivable back. When you do a subscription model, unless your costs are covered on that first sale, that's the important thing.
They are.
Because because otherwise you need a different amount of startup money because you're not getting your profitability. The other thing I wanted to ask you is why are you looking at a much more difficult distribution model of going out to the schools and to the youth leagues rather than teaming up with the helmet companies that already have the salespeople and the distribution in the market? Why is it that you're looking to do this separately from the helmet rather than teaming up with a Riddell or a Schutt that already has most of the market share of helmets in the sport leagues?
Right. So Riddell, as you know, looking at the space, is about 70% of the football market. They actually have a competing product which sells for $1,000 per helmet, so it's not really viable for the youth market. And they are working on a lower cost product, which has some other issues associated with it. We are in discussions with one of the Riddell competitors, and those discussions are going really well. We have 4 other OEM helmet manufacturers that we're in various stages of discussions with them in terms of integrating the technology or just doing collaborative marketing. Because you're right, it's really difficult to establish a new channel, and this is really a new product category. So this is one of the challenges we have. Another one of the challenges we have, to sort of amplify on what you're saying, is that the biggest market is the youth market, 14 years old and younger. When you get into the high school level, the market is really neck down significantly. When you get to the college, it's half of what it is in high school. So it's really the youth market, and there is no really easy way to access the young market, which is made up primarily of adults managing, volunteering to coach their kids. So it's a difficult database to acquire. We've done sort of the grunt work in the trenches to acquire a large database of all these youth and commissioners at the youth level for football, hockey, and lacrosse. But it is challenging.
I think that's the thing that I worry the most about for you, is the number of people and the amount of work it would take for you to address the market in the way it seems you're willing to go. I mean, you have to sell a lot of these sensors to actually build a business. And when you look at your costs, you're not looking at the cost of building a huge team of people and paying commissions. You're actually looking at your cost of building the product. And one of the mistakes that people make is they've got a very small company of, let's say, $1 million of revenues, and they run a pricing model based on that structure. Then all of a sudden they get big orders and they grow, and they don't understand the working capital, the additional people they need, and how that changes. I mean, one of the things that I've built is a pricing model, an interactive financial model for small businesses, because they get you have a small business and you have a SG&A and overhead of 5 employees, right, for your small business. Now you want to grow into a $50 million business, and you never consider the fact that you need a CFO, you need 10 salespeople, you need to pay commission, and you don't allocate that in the cost. And now your $50 sensor really needed to be a $100 sensor. And so these are the things that I worry about. I think you have a great idea, and you have tremendous experience in terms of, building product. And I haven't seen the product yet, and but that's not my worry. My worry is, how do you take this great idea and actually turn it into a financial model that works? And for me, if I were you, I'd want not to have to build that huge infrastructure of salespeople. And one of the most difficult things is actually selling to the schools and getting in through the youth leagues and being able to touch everybody. And if you can't build up a sufficient number of bodies and revenues, it really doesn't matter, because someone who has the distribution system, someone like Riddell or their competitors, are just going to come up with a competitive product to what you've done and already have that distribution.
I think you're right. I've been looking for the appropriate distribution partners, and continue to look. I feel that one of the keys for us is going to be, getting the product, getting some initial market traction, and that's going to open the door for some of those distribution partners to really want to dialogue with us and partner with us. And I'm totally open to that. And I think you're right on target.
I'd love to sit down with you sometime, with your business plan, and really go through it and give you, the best I have in terms of suggestions on how I would do it, or if there's any of my companies that can help you in any way. I think you have a really good idea, but great ideas need the structure and the framework and the funding behind it, because many great ideas die just because they can't get to the customer, to the end customer, no matter how great they are.
I'd very much welcome that, and I really appreciate that offer. So let's schedule that and make it happen.
It's a deal. Have a great day.
Okay.
Bye-bye.